Good morning. Welcome to the Outdoor Archives. This isn't the stage that I usually work in. I'm usually in the woods somewhere, or walking or riding this guy. But if you saw my last few videos, I'm kind of grounded for a little while, and I don't do things halfway. So instead of just hyperextending the MCL on one knee, I actually did it on both knees at the same time. And while I was at it, I actually managed to pull a little bit of a hamstring too. So I'm in rough shape for a few weeks. The good news is the doctor doesn't think there's anything permanent. I just need to kind of stay put for a few weeks. A little bit of walking, the doc says, is okay, just nothing too big, not a lot of twisting, stuff like that, just light duty stuff. So I was going to come in the garage today and do a little bit of work on this guy. And something I've been meaning to do, and it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of information out there on it, is to add an accessory block. So an accessory block is something that you would put on an ATV or even a car or whatever, so you could put extra accessories on that. Things like lights. I'm going to put like a USB connector because I'm going to power my phone, and various other things. It's a pretty common thing to do. And I'm not going to proclaim to be the expert on it. I'm certainly not. I'm not an electrician. I'm not a mechanic. This is just the way that I've done it before. I've done it once before. So again, I'm going to probably fumble through this a little bit, but I think it's going to be useful for a lot of people. So bear with me and we'll get started. So if you don't know what I mean by an accessory block, essentially, if I can get this off, just a little fuse panel. So the idea is you have your wire coming from your battery here, and then you have outlets on all sides. Now, being that this is an ATV, it's made to, go through water and mud. So what I did is I got a little box here. This looks like it's from conduit or something. And although I'm going to need to drill some holes to let wires in, I think it's going to do a pretty good job of keeping the elements out. And you might be thinking, well, this looks a little big. It is big, but the reason is that I'm also going to have some relays, probably 2 of them, that are going to end up going in here if I could fit them. So my idea was first to kind of mount this under the seat of the ATV. There's just no room. So my ATV has a flip open front rack here. And I found that I could just, sorry, got a lot of junk here, but I could just fit it right there and still manage to close the front rack. And I think that'll work. It's probably my best option. I've looked under the seat. There's somewhere places in the back underneath the ATV I can mount it. But if I ever had to change a fuse, on the trail, it's going to be problematic. So I think this is going to be my best bet here. And it's not going to take up too much room in there, and it'll be protected from there's going to be some high amperage going in there. I don't want a screwdriver or something to hit it and spark and cause problems. So I think that's going to be my best bet. My first order of business is to find what I call an accessory wire. And what I mean by that is a wire that's powered on only when the key is on. And the reason I need that is I don't want this thing to have power when the ATV is off, because it's going to drain my battery or cause other potential problems with shorts and things like that. So what I do was I kind of just probed a bunch of wires, and I found one, luckily, just hanging here. This particular ATV seems to have it. You see there's no power, but when I turn the key on, I have power. So I turn the key off, there's no power. So this is not going to power my whole circuit. This is going to power what I call, what's called, I guess, is a relay. One of these guys here. And what this does is, this has a bunch of connections on it. There's a connection that comes from the battery, and then there's going to be a connection that's going to come from this particular wire here. And that wire is basically going to turn a switch on inside here. That's going to power the relay and eventually power the fuse block right from the battery. That's going to give us high current only when the ATV is on, which is desirable. It's what I want. So I've picked up one of these. This is I don't know what it stands for. It's like an ATP inline fuse connector. And there's other cheaper ones you can get. This one costs a little more, but I like it because it looks like it's relatively well sealed, and it seems to click the fuse in nicely. This is going to go right at the battery. You should always have a fuse at the battery, because if this wire shorts out, it could start a fire. So my battery's located underneath the rear tires. It's going to get a lot of snow and dirt and gunk in there, so I want to make sure this is as well protected as possible. I also got one of these little terminal connectors here, and this is, I think, a heat shrinkable one. So I think when you heat it, this is going to shrink and give us a better connection, because as it is, these I'm not too crazy about the way these connect, because basically just go on here, you crimp it with the tool, and then it's connected. But it's just a little mechanical connection, and after some time it could come loose. So this is the finished product here. Hopefully that'll focus in for you. What I did was I crimped the terminal piece on here with this. So I gave it a nice good squeeze, got the wire on there pretty tightly, and then I ended up using some shrink wrap, just this rubberized, I don't know what it is, plastic or rubberized material here. And with this, whoops, of course now it doesn't work, but this little butane torch, just gave it a little touch, rolled it around until this got nice and tight on the wire, and now it's pretty solid. And I think it's going to keep the connection really good and keep the water and snow and mud from getting in there and possibly corroding that connection. So I think this should be good to go. So this connects right to the positive of the battery, and I'm going to have to run this to the front of the quad. So I'm going to use some of these connectors here. And again, it's a mechanical connection. These go inside, you crimp them, and I'm going to also shrink wrap them to keep the crud out. I couldn't fit the shrink wrap around this piece here, so I'm going to try to do two pieces of shrink wrap. One, this is just kind of a placeholder here, because this is not going to shrink that much. I'm hoping that this will be enough thickness on the wire to do what I need. So I'm going to pop this on here. Make sure it's in there nice and tight. Give it a bit of a squeeze. Okay, so it seems okay. Now I'll take this smaller one and just make sure it's threaded all the way in, and this one's going to go eventually over top like that, and I'll probably end up doing the same thing on the other side with another one of these, and then shrink wrap the whole thing. This is not going to win any awards for the neatest job on the planet, but this part is hidden underneath the frame anyway. So I did connect the three pieces of shrink wrap here, and this piece here, it shrunk down just enough, but just to be safe, I put a couple pieces of electrical tape there. I just don't want any water getting in there and corroding this piece, because you're going to have problems on the trail. Maybe not the first few times you drive, but after you get a little bit of water in there, it freezes, it thaws, it works its way in, and eventually something will happen. So hopefully this will keep it nice and dry and keep us running for quite a while. Next thing I need to do is kind of plan where I want to route this wire. And I know I had this piece off the other day, and I can feed it through here along the frame and out through here. So I just want to kind of roughly gather how much I need so I can cut the wire. It looks like I've got probably it's got to end up here, and I want at least a foot or more extra in case I need to route this differently. Alright guys, I had to take this panel off and feed the wire through. What I'm going to do now is just temporarily, these will probably end up being permanent, but I just want to get it roughly in place so it doesn't get pinched anywhere, and I know that I can run it properly. Another thing to keep in mind, this side here on my bike, these are all the air breathers, so I've got nothing warm here, no exhaust or anything else that I'm worried is going to melt this wire. So keep that in mind when you're routing the wire. So for now, I'm just going to go around the frame here. Don't know how much of this you can see, but sorry, I seem to have lost the audio for this clip. I just go on and explain how I ran the wire from the back of the bike through the front storage compartment and into the gray case, which is going to hold the accessory block. Now I'm showing how I use the heat shrink terminal on here to connect it properly to the cable. You'll see I'm kind of turning it around, heating it up slowly, and eventually that will stick nicely to the cable and create a great connection that should last for years. It's been a few days since I've been out here. Apparently I overdid it. My knees were really bugging me after the build the other day, so I've been just kind of coming in here doing little bits and pieces at a time, 5-10 minutes, and then going and resting my knees. So I haven't had a lot of time to film any of that, but all that really has to do specifically with the build of this particular ATV, and I don't think it's going to hinder you in any way, and I'll just explain what it is I did. So you remember I ran this wire, this is my main wire here. I ran along the frame to the battery and it's fused. So I did connect that up to the battery, at least temporarily. I didn't really like the way it fit on there, so I'm gonna think of another way to do it, but this will be fine for now. Got the wire running through here, and maybe you can't see, but here I had to drill a little hole to run the wire through, because I've got a case here. So it's just a tiny plastic hole, and I drilled a hole the same size as the wire, and it's pretty tight in there, which is good. And then I ran that to my fuse block. I did hook up the relay. That's this guy right here. If you don't know what a relay is, there's a few videos on YouTube that I'd suggest you search. What it essentially is a switch that controls a different circuit. So the switch, if you remember, sorry, I've been playing with things and trying to get everything to fit here. This is my accessory wire. So you see this is a small gauge wire. I cannot handle a lot of current on this line. So what I just use this for, you remember I tested this the other day, when the key is on, I do have power here. So what I use this for is just to power the relay, just to turn on the switch there. The relay itself is connected right to the battery, so the main current comes from that, but it's off when the bike is not running, which is good, so I don't drain anything and have power, whole thing powered up the whole time. So I did hook that up, and I also ran that wire through as well. And into my box here, you can see it's a little bit crowded, but not too bad. I'm going to actually fasten these in there, and I'll let you have a closer look after, but I think it's going to work just fine. And let's do a little test here. Another thing I did do is I ran a ground wire right to the frame, another thick, I use 12 gauge wire. It's going to depend on how much current and stuff you're going to run. You need to do some research before you do this. So what I want to see here is, so there's no power now. I'm going to turn the key on. I heard it click, which is good, the relay. So no power when the bike's off. So it's working as I expect it to. So what I think I'm going to do now is kind of try to tidy up this build and fasten this in its final spot. And then looks like I've got it mounted and about ready to go here. So what I did was I actually screwed in the fuse block and the relay as well. So they're sitting in there pretty tightly, and they're screwed right into this plastic piece here. And this plastic piece is removable. So there's access down there to the radiator and other things. So I did put some extra wire here. There's a bit of a mess here. And the reason I did that is in case I ever have to relocate this. This is my first experience doing it on an ATV like this, so I'm not sure if this area is going to work. But with the wire I had, I can actually move it over here. And I know it'll work here, but this is a deeper area here, and I wanted to store some tools and stuff, and I figured for my usage it would be best right here. So that's where I did it. So I also tested the circuit, and if I can see what I'm doing, it still works, so we're good to go there. My next order of business is to be installing this guy here. And I'll probably do that when I have some more time next week or whatever. It's a USB charger, so I can charge up my phone or modern day GPSs, whatever. That'll probably be my first order of business, and I'm really hoping that if Mrs. Outdoor Archives or Santa is nice to me, that I'll have a light bar here to mount in the new year. So I might do that, but the first step is done, and you know, other than a little bit of excess wire here, which I could fix. I could cut this and recrimp it all now that I know exactly how much length I need. I'll probably run it for a month or two, see if I have any problems. If not, I'll crimp this and do it neatly. But for now, I'm generally happy with it. It works. Remember that I'm going to have the lid on here, so it'll all be pretty much sealed, and I hope not to have any problems with it. So I'll update you if I do. But so far, you know, not too bad. So if you're going to attempt this yourself, make sure you review how to use a relay. I know a lot of my friends did not do that because, you know, it's kind of intimidating. There's a bunch of wires there and you don't really know what they do. But when you actually take some time to learn it, it's pretty simple circuit, and it really adds the next dimension to your circuit, because now, you know, you don't have this thing on all the time. And I've had my friends that they've wired right up to the battery, they leave a light on or a GPS all night, and next morning they go, battery's dead. And that takes up your valuable riding time. So this is the preferred way to do it. So, you know, just do a little bit of research on, you know, what gauge wire you want, what fuse you want, what amperage you need, and things like that. This one's wired for 20 amps, and the light bar I want to get is, I think, 8 amps draw. So between that, my USB, which is going to be 2 amps, I'm at 10, and I still have 2 more circuits, a couple of other things that I'm thinking about, maybe some kind of communications device, and then I'll just have 1 extra. So I should have quite a bit of amperage for future add-ons. And even if I do get a bit of a bigger light kit, I'm still okay. I could probably go up to, you know, 12 amps without much of a problem. So again, I'm not an expert, so double check, you know, with somebody who's done this before, or a mechanic, electrician, whatever, on the gauges of wires. Do some research on the relays, and you know, it was overall a fun project, and I could have probably had this done in you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours if I was feeling better, but it just took me a bit longer to do it this time. But you know what, I'm fairly happy with the results, and hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it, and good luck if you do intend to modify your own, and we hope to see you in the next video. Thanks again.